that scare you? If your heart is beating faster than it was 5 seconds ago, you may have experienced increased adrenaline. Adrenaline, also known as epinephrine, is a stress hormone released when someone is scared or stressed suddenly. When someone is shocked, adrenaline is released into the circulatory system, which stimulates the heart, airways, blood vessels, and eyes. This is all in order to trigger the fight or flight response, a survival mechanism that aids in reacting quickly to life-threatening situations. You may already know that cell signals, or ligands, bind to receptors. Hydrophobic nonpolar molecules are smaller and can pass through the hydrophobic lipid tails of the plasma membrane. On the other hand, hydrophilic polar molecules are larger and unable to pass through the plasma membrane. Thus, ligand receptors of hydrophobic molecules are on the inside of cells, and receptors for hydrophilic molecules are on the outside of cells. Adrenaline is a hydrophilic polar ligand. This is because its receptors are adrenergic receptors, which are on the outside of the cell. Adrenergic receptors are G-protein coupled receptors, which means that G-proteins facilitate signal transduction of the external stimulus. In this case, the external stimulus can be any exciting, stressful, or dangerous situation. When cells receive the adrenaline ligand, signal transduction allows the fight or flight response to occur. There are advantages and disadvantages of adrenaline and adrenergic receptors. Adrenaline is very useful in dangerous situations because it mobilizes your body instantaneously. For instance, if you happen to be getting chased by a bear in the forest, a fight or flight response will kick in rapidly and allow you to run. Adrenaline will allow you to use your muscles to full capacity during this scary situation. However, adrenaline also has its disadvantages. Although the fight or flight response can be activated rapidly, this is not a sustainable response. The longer adrenaline binds to adrenergic receptors, the more likely the organism is to feel fatigued, experience anxiety, and have trouble breathing. Now that you know the general information about adrenaline, we will discuss a more detailed explanation of the signaling pathway. First, adrenaline binds to the adrenergic receptor, which activates the alpha enzyme of the receptor's G-protein. Then the alpha enzyme's GDP gains a phosphate group to turn into GTP, which activates the alpha enzyme. The alpha enzyme binds to adenylate cyclase, a membrane-bound enzyme that produces cyclic AMP, a secondary messenger. Adenylate cyclase takes ATP and uses it for signaling by rearranging ATP molecules to make cyclic AMP. Adrenaline affects the body rapidly because all of the cyclic AMP molecules interact with 3 proteins that eventually help to break down glycogen phosphorylase. The first protein interaction is with kinase, which has a binding site that cyclic AMP binds to and activates. This leads to a conformational change. The second protein interaction is with phosphorylase kinase, which gets phosphorylated and activated, which leads to a conformational change. The third protein interaction is with glycogen phosphorylase, which also gets phosphorylated and activated and leads to a conformational change. When the glycogen phosphorylate enzyme gets activated, it can break down glycogen, which releases a lot of energy quickly. This energy release mobilizes the body to initiate the fight or flight response. Now that the fight or flight response has occurred, airways and blood vessels expand immediately. When faced with danger, this gives the body the ability to defend itself or to escape. The increased oxygen intake by the lungs and the rapid flow of the circulatory system efficiently mobilize the body for response. When the fight or flight response is no longer needed because the threat has subsided, the passageway can be shut down by dissociating the adrenaline ligands from the adrenergic receptors. This will prevent the activation of G-proteins, shutting down signal transduction across the cell. If the G-protein is not activated, then adenylate cyclase cannot produce cyclic AMP. Without the second messenger cyclic AMP, the kinases will not respond to the signal. Then, amplification will not occur and fight or flight will be terminated. This concludes our summary of the adrenaline signaling pathway. We hope you learned something new and that you can now understand why your heartbeat picks up when someone says,